Imagine if one of our older members here at Central came up and told you that they are moving, leaving Chattanooga, moving to a foreign country. They're going to take along their wife and nephew with them, and they're going to be living in a gypsy-style living, moving about in a place that's rather desolate. A place that there's no phones, no communication, no modern conveniences, nothing whatsoever. They're not sure exactly where they're going. They're not taking any maps with them, but they're just going to leave just the same. And they're going to be heading out very soon. And what would you say to them? Would you encourage them to make that decision? Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to the land I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from the city of Haran. Then Abram took his wife Sarah with him, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions, and all they gathered, and the people with whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Hebrews chapter 11. A little synopsis of this. Verses 8 to 10. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith he dwelt in the land of the promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, and their heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city for which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And by faith Sarah also herself received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. By faith, Abraham went out, older than the average person that would be moving, even in his day and time. No modern conveniences, no maps, no assurance of where he was going, why he was going, or what he would find. He just went out. I have a couple of young men that are going to be reading phrases along the way, so they're not just stepping up and saying things, but I want to just make you aware of that so as it happens here. But I want you to see number one, Alex.
By faith Abraham went out. By faith Abraham went out, not knowing where he would go.
Now Exodus chapter 2. Another individual. Verses 11 to 15. Now it came to pass in those days when Moses had grown, that he went out to his brethren, and he looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And then he went out a second day, and behold, two Hebrew men were fighting, and he said to the one who did the wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" Then he said to him, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So Abraham feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." And when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by the well there at Midian. chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. Now Moses, as he was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, with the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. So he looked and he beheld, and the bush was burning with fire, but the bush did not get consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great thing, why the bush does not burn. So when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush, and he said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And then he said, Do not draw near to this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you're walking or standing is holy ground. And moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cries because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and bring them up from the land to a good and large land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. And I've also seen the oppression of which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. As you read on in this section, you'll find that Abraham was scared. He began offering a variety of different excuses to God of why he wasn't the one equipped to go. Each time Abraham would offer excuse, God came back with an answer. Eventually, God got a bit upset with him because he wasn't wanting to go. Verse 13. So Abraham comes and says, Please, Lord, send by the hand of whomever else you may send. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. But eventually we find in verses 18 to 20, so Moses went, and he returned to Jethro, his father-in-law. And he said to him, Please let me go and return to my brethren who are in Egypt, and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, Go, return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. Then Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God with his hands. Alex, the second part once again.
By faith Abraham went out, not knowing where he would go.
Greg?
By faith Moses returned to a land which might consume him.
By faith Abraham went out. By faith Moses went back. The direction was chosen by God in each place. What I want to talk about are two men of great examples of faith tonight. One went out, and another returned. Both demonstrations of faith. They lived a life that was challenged by God. And around every corner, they had no idea what was coming up. And yet by faith, they did what God asked. One went out, one returned, knowing that God would accomplish all that he planned to do through them if they would just follow what God asked. They were knowing that they were doing God's will in the whole process. So by faith, they made those choices. By faith, they moved. The entire book, or chapter rather, of Hebrews, in chapter 11, discusses action of men, things that they did, each time introducing it by faith. They did this. By faith, they did that. By faith, Abraham went out. By faith, Moses went back. Chapter 11 again in the book of Hebrews. Verses 23 down to 29. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw that he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of the Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the approach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should destroy him. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, whereas the Egyptians, attempting to do so, were drowned. Along the way, both of these men faced obstacles. Their faith caused them to move, but it wasn't a thing that always caused them to be perfect. They had met obstacles in their life, and sometimes they overcame those things by their faith, and sometimes they fell along the way. They weren't perfect, but they did what God asked them to do. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. If I start the verse, I'm sure many of you could finish the quote, though you may not know the location. For we walk by faith, not by sight. It's interesting what God is asking of us as Christians today. And with the examples of these men, not knowing where we're going, like Abraham, or, for that case, Moses, how it would be turning out. But their life was a journey, and they chose to walk with God by faith. The question is, how's your walk going? By faith, we're to walk, not by sight. So how is your sight going? An interesting comment is made in Luke 18, verse 8. Comment referring to Jesus. The latter part of the verse says, "For when the Son of Man comes," talking about his return, "will he find faith?" Will he find faith in you? Will he find faith in Central? Will he find people moving? People choosing to walk? People directed by God's direction, not worrying about fears, not struggling with life as much as making sure that we are on the path that Jesus wants us to walk. Short lesson, but a good question. How's your walk? Is it by faith? We sing a song at the end of the service like we always do, inviting anyone that's struggling, anyone that's ready to become a Christian, anyone needing to repent of sin. But the challenge for all of us, everyone, no matter where we're at in life, whatever age, wherever we're at as far as our maturity level might be, is to walk by faith. Abraham, 75, had to make choices. Moses, a bit younger along the way and growing old in the process. But God chooses people and asks people to walk with Him by faith. If you need to respond to the gospel invitation, we ask you to sing and come forward as we sing this song. Don't stand for right now, just sing. And if you need to respond, let us know at the end of the lesson. At the end of the song.